All right. So today I have with me Untold Melody.
Hey
Um,
guys, how's it going?
yeah, nice to have you. Thanks for coming by and agreeing to talk with me for a little bit.
Thanks for having me. I'm flattered.
No problem. So I guess we'll go right into it here. Please go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself outside of uni, as much as you're comfortable about talking about.
Shoot. Well, I honestly think of myself as a pretty plain dude for the most part. I uh, I actually think a lot of things that developed from me actually came from the introduction of fighting games in particular.
Mm,
Uni the most so because it's the one I practice with the most. But other than just like doing that and picking up art during the pandemic, I think I actually really don't do too much other than like work. So
yeah,
it's definitely a big passion for me.
I've been there too. Like school and work, like have taken up so much of my brain space that like now that I've graduated and I'm on this vacation for 2 weeks or whatever, I'm like, oh fuck, like this isn't like a prelude to doing some other stuff. Like I actually just have time. Like this, I don't know what to do anymore. So that actually leads me into the question you touched on it a little bit before. But I wanted to ask what you consider your hobbies are. I know that you've been grinding your art recently too.
Actually, this probably isn't surprising at all, due to my alias on the internet. But I did used to be like really into music
Mm,
when I was in middle school and high school. I pretty much lost my entire life during that period of my life to just music and being in band all the time. Like I literally didn't have a social life because of it. And
yeah,
when I got out of high school, it was pretty jarring. I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's too expensive. I need nowhere to
yeah,
go.
yeah. I had friends when I went to college the first time because again, to a little bit about myself, I went back to college, but
Right.
a lot of my friends were in Ohio University's marching band, and that stuff in college, that is your social life, basically, right?
Right.
You are so entrenched like with your work schedule and then the marching and things like that, like you don't really have too much time outside of like class and stuff to do too much else, if you're doing music to that extent. So yeah.
I definitely tricked myself when I was in college too because I thought I could handle music while I was also working a full time job, and I don't recommend it very much
Yeah,
unless you're like hard like dedicated. It's just so unrealistic.
yeah, it can definitely be difficult. So we'll transition into the gaming side here. How did you get into Under Night, and how long have you actually been playing the game?
I've actually been playing the game pretty soon after ST came out. The thing that actually got me to start playing it was that Velvet, actually, the player,
Mm-hmm.
he started me in fighting games in the first place with by forcing a copy of Skullgirls on me.
Oh yeah.
When every time it goes on sale, it's literally cheaper than a bag of dirt.
Mm-hmm.
So he got me that in Blaze Blue. So we started through those two games, and we eventually discovered Under Night. And we started with EL,
Mm-hmm.
and discovered that that was not a game we were willing to play too much. And then we later saw the game was updated. We saw like the Unicord, and the community was actually pretty good at like building everything up. The
Yeah.
thing that actually got me started in this game was he played Hilda originally before he picked up Batista,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought she was such an annoying character that I just wanted to give other people like that same feeling, and
Feeling.
that's why I like practiced
Yeah.
her so much.
Yeah. I can empathize with that. I don't. I've talked about this a little bit, but not too much. That is kind of my relationship with Batista. Like I'm
Yeah.
slowly learning how to play that character. But my original training partner was basically a Batista player, and I was playing
Right.
Batista versus Akatsuki in EL. And so basically, you could say that my entire framework of like play and my play philosophy came from that. So that really defined how I think about uni and like how I play uni. But we'll transition into another question here. Since we talked about how you got into Under Night and how long you've been playing, which has roughly been since like 2018, I would say.
I believe so.
What in particular do you like the most about Under Night?
Something that I think stands out about this game significantly from most fighting games that you play is that 98% of the setups in this game are pretty reactable,
Yeah.
which actually makes it more of a mind game instead of you actually just getting like charactered on. Like if I'm fighting like something in Blaze Blue, like Izanami, like you have to deal with ribcage. That's not like a player interaction. It's just you got to figure that out, or you're just gonna die until you do.
Yeah,
And
that's
in this game, you can like take more time to like figure something out. It's more obvious.
yeah, that was a point of difficulty for me with Blaze Blue because like I mean every fighting game is a system game, right? But like Blaze Blue has so many systems based on the characters. Like you have an overall game system, but you also have to pay attention to the character systems, and that was really overwhelming for me. Like I know a part of Blaze Blue is like the freedom to play your character system and then try it against other character systems, but like that was way too much for me. You know, getting into anime games for the first time, like seriously, right?
That game's also just fast.
It's
like,
very
it's
fast. Very, very, very fast. Very
Still
fast.
love it, though.
Yeah. Kind of along the same vein about uni, what has been a personal moment in uni that you can look back on and kind of like talk fondly about or smile about, that sort of thing?
I definitely think that something I really enjoyed was participating in my first major with Frosty Faustings and
Wow, that was your first one, huh? Yeah, that was this year.
Yeah, and it was honestly really scary because, well, two things happened. My pools were the same day as like top 16 and top 8, so I was very exhausted the entire time.
Yeah.
Like after the first half, because I just kept playing the game. I think that was definitely a big part because I went back and watched the VOD and I was like, I had to have been tired because my decisions made no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
But a particular game I remember very fondly was the one that got me out of pools in the first place, and it was against Uchiha. And I didn't have too much Gord experience at the time, but it was definitely one of my favorite matchups. And I actually talked to Uchiha all the time.
Oh, okay.
Like when we finished the set, like even though I won, like he just like hugged me, and I still remember that because it was a really big deal for me, and it felt like I felt really connected with the community at that particular moment, and it's definitely why I have like such a high thought of Uchiha.
Yeah, like Uchiha, I remember after that weekend, just from watching him and playing him, and like I actually didn't get to play him. I wanted to play him, but I didn't get around to playing him. But talking to him and watching him kind of put him on my radar too, because I wasn't so familiar with him. You know, you know some of the higher profile players in Texas. You know, people like Masoma, people like Silent, people like Luna, and Uchiha has been coming along for like I don't want to say a long time because like I think much like you, he kind of started in 2018, but like it's kind of crazy how fast people come on the radar sometimes.
He's being really sneaky about it.
Yeah, but so we've kind of again alluded to it, but I wanted to ask this straight out. Who is your main character and why did you choose them?
Oh, okay, so the funny thing is, at first I was actually a Hyde/Enkidu player because I like to start with like actually the most basic character that I can think of, and I got confused looking at Enkidu and thinking that he was a Shoto until realizing really fast that that's just not true.
No, he seems like it, but he's not.
Plan.
Yeah.
And since I tried Akatsuki for like 2 days and saw how small his normals were, I was like, okay, we're just gonna stick with Insulator Boy. I stuck with him for like 200 hours of gameplay, and then I started getting Hilded. And that ultimately changed my mind. I was like, let me figure out how to, like, because if I'm struggling with a character, I want to, like, play them a little bit to figure out their game plan, because you pretty quickly figure out what your weakness is when you're trying to enforce that game plan.
Yep.
And I accidentally just started playing the character, so I just turned into a Hilda player by, accident of studying.
So, it's kind of funny how that ends up, because I played two characters that might be a little bit surprising. One of them maybe not so, but the other one's definitely a little bit more surprising. When I started playing in EL, I started as a Line player. Like, I saw that character, I was like, yo, this character's super fast. She gets in, like, rushes people down, has a dive kick. I'm like, okay, I want to play this. Yeah. Sorry, there's another character too. When I looked at Under Night for the first time, because I saw the trailer for Under Night in Birth, I was like, I want to play Line and I want to play Yuzuriha. And I have not played a single second of Yuzuriha outside of training mode. But the other character where I got kind of annoyed, because I was getting beat up, I was like new to fighting games. I was just like, okay, Line is not really working the way I want it to work. I like can't do her motions very well and things like that. Like, let me go to a different character. And that character was Byakuya. Byakuya was actually my second character. And EL Byakuya was not very good, but you know, I wasn't very good, so it didn't matter. Ultimately, I thought he was too complicated too, and that got me to Akatsuki. And, you
Yo,
know, the rest is history.
do you think that you'd still be playing Vyaki if you picked him up in ST instead of VL?
No, I don't think so. Byakuya is not a not a particularly interesting character for me to want to play. Even though I like watching Byakuya players and I love watching Clearlamp. He's one of my favorite players to watch of all time. But I think like what he doesn't really like fit into what I want to do, which was also why I didn't play Yuzuriha.
Right.
But, you know, I've talked about my sub-characters a little bit. You touched on the fact that you play Hyde and Enkidu, but do you have any other sub-characters that you like to play?
So I typically play this game for a pretty good amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So usually when I'm bored, I'll just like look at B&Bs for other characters. So it's like a big joke that I play like 75% of the cast because I won't play Batista because I'm allergic to charge, and Yuzuriha makes my hands hurt. So I try to give pretty much everybody a chance. Those two and Carmine are probably the ones that I like actually just can't do a combo for because I don't look at them because it's too much for a sub character.
Yeah.
But I'm actually glancing at Phonon right now because her combos are pretty fun and her ranges are more satisfying than Hilda's. Her normals are... She actually has good frame data.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
I think her advanced combos and stuff, like the newer stuff, like the higher execution ST stuff and the newer like clear stuff are really interesting to me. Like I like those routes and I almost picked up Phonon too, but I've been spoiled by Akatsuki. I don't like her normals that much.
Surprisingly, I actually think that Phonon's roots got easier and they do like 600 more damage.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
I think if you haven't wired your brain to how Phonon like comboed in ST, then you're definitely going to feel differently about her in Clear, because it's almost the exact opposite for people who played Phonon in ST coming to Clear. A lot of them...
The 5 frames pretty big too.
Yeah, that's pretty big. But so we'll move to the next question here. What would you consider to be your playstyle? How do you think that you express yourself in this game?
I definitely think that I'm a big dork when it comes to the Vorpal cycle, because I try to listen to myself when I'm playing so that I can focus on like my thought process. So I speak out like I'm doing this because X, and a lot of times I'm like, I took damage here, but I'm actually okay because I took the risk and I won the cycle anyway. So good luck with this wake up.
Yeah,
stuff like that, and I do think that it's like actually more important than hitting someone in this game for the most part because it puts you in more scenarios where you're just blatantly at an advantage because you can, as I like to say, cheat the game with Vorpal. I think that's a really big thing that's slept on by a lot of players that are like newer. So it's not something you can just like figure out. It's pretty complex. You get to also learn like to control your character and then handle that at the same time.
Yeah, I think playing to the cycle, like playing that metagame, is definitely something that you learn from playing people. Like you can't really learn that by like just going into the lab or whatever. Like I guess in theory you can. Like if you're looking, you can like set the Vorpal cycle, I think, to certain parts of the cycle. And then you could say like, oh, okay, if I assault here, blah, blah, blah. But like even that thinking, I think, is a little esoteric, right?
Right.
Like you have to kind of have some input to start thinking about that thing before you get to that point. Ironically enough, or, believe it or not, I guess is the better way to express that. I think that my Vorpal control is not particularly great. That's an aspect of my own gameplay that I kind of want to work on in the future. I've just been thinking more about like Akatsuki as a character rather than playing to the subsystems right now. But so on that expression part, would you say that you think the ability to play to those subsystems and like weigh that risk reward is part of your expression in this game? Because that's kind of interesting. I've played against like so many different Hildas in this game, from Angel to Liam to Slam and, Waterloo Hilda. And they're all very different. You included too. You're all very different.
It's surprising because like it feels like the character does the same thing except it's basically just like the combo and setting up Bloom, but other than that, I feel like no one actually controls the same.
Yeah, I agree that too. I think that's kind of the same with Akatsuki to some extent, but like he's such a polarizing type of character. Like I think if you look at Akatsuki on the surface, you think, oh, it's just a Shoto, you can kind of play him the way that you want, but like he has to play up close. That's his objective. And so
Right.
the way that you kind of get to that point might be different, but what you do when you're there is like the same, you know?
Because a lot of Akatsuki players play really differently, but all people remember is the Bitatsu that hit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's one of the best starters for him, right?
It really is.
But so is there a matchup that you think is your best personal matchup? And if so, why is that your best matchup?
In particular, the matchup that I feel I do the best in is ironically what I regard as one of Hilda's worst matchups, because Hyde is a really big problem for her because she can harass him very well, and if she can get the hits in, like she has a decent kill, like really good kill potential because Hyde is usually pretty radical in how he handles pressure from Hilda, so that may just get him killed on his own. But the more patient a Hyde is, the harder it is. But most Hydes aren't very patient, so you get to use that to your benefit. You kind of try to overload them into thinking they have control, and then play a lot safer. You can't actually like be a gorilla when you're like trying to use your pressure against Hyde, because he actually always has 6/6C present, and then there's his chip even if he doesn't hit you. Because if you get put in the corner, you pretty much lose, because as long as he wins Vorpal, the game's over because you can no longer punish anything, because all you have going for you is either Veil Off or Anti, because it has projectile involved, and if he has Vorpal, he can just like ignore your only line of defense. He just hit you anyway. And if he doesn't do that, he just chips you the whole round. So you just gotta hold it.
Yeah, and I think maybe one of the things that some players don't necessarily understand, and I talked about it when I last streamed, like the aspect of maintaining positional advantage against Hilda is like paramount to defeating a character like this. Like she really, I think, relies on you overcommitting or committing to certain options that she can kind of like make a hard call out on. And it feels pretty bad because like if she is correct and she gets out, you might lose the game right there, you know?
Yeah, it's very easy to just straight lose it. It feels terrible.
Yeah. And on the flip side, like specifically talking about Hyde, the way that that character structures offense, which is very like basic, like you can up your efficiency just by understanding how to defeat OS and things like that. Hyde is equipped to do that, and he hurts. He hurts so much when you get hit by certain things in the corner, you know?
Things like 4K meterless. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
And in addition to that, like with Hilda in particular, she kind of struggles with horizontal reversals. And Veil or Palebringer is one of the best of its type. So like CS Palebringer has to be really stressful to play around too, I'd have to imagine.
Surprisingly, the Palebringer is actually the worst of the horizontal reversals range-wise. So if you're at a particular spacing and you have meter, you can actually bait it with an EX orb, since she does yeet back a little bit.
Yeah, she does swing back like that.
You are not allowed to do that to Aurea. She moves way too far forward.
Yeah,
And
she has a lot of invul
like
too.
80% of the screen. Wait, invul? Oh, Aurea, yeah.
Yeah.
She doesn't care at all. Even though she would probably just be thrust. That's still a big problem.
Yeah, B thrust is pretty important, but sometimes you need that invul too, to get through things like orbs or to shoot through projectiles. You know, because if you try to thrust through a projectile, you can get hit. That's something that you do have to pay attention to on the Aurier side. But speaking of Aurier, is there a particular matchup that you think that you struggle with the most, and then why is that?
Surprisingly, I actually I know Akatsuki is like a really bad like matchup for him, but
Really?
it just
You think
feels
so?
like I think it's bad for him, but in the context of playing just like the Vorpal cycle, when you account for that, I think the matchup gets a lot better for him, because if he exploits Vorpal, it's a lot easier for him to get in, because I can't make one of those plays where I throw something in CS and see that you tried to avoid it, and now I can control that space as well at the same time.
Yeah.
Because one of my favorite things about that character is checking Assault with 623A. CSing and seeing that you jumped in the air over it, so I could just still anti-air you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
If Akatsuki plays really patient, which is a big problem because Akatsuki players are typically really patient about how they get in, whether they know it or not. They are, playing calmly actually is very good in the Vorpal cycle, and it makes it difficult. So now you have to take more risk to like at least concentrate, bait like a green shield. If you mess those things up and you lose the cycle, that is very bad, because if you take this hit because of that cycle loss, that is why you lost.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
And I won't overload this interview with Akatsuki versus Hilda discussion. Akatsuki versus Hilda is actually one of my best matchups, I think. Might be in the running of one of my favorite. I get in the corner. Yeah, he can make it. Yeah, I think Jump. You in particular, I think, have been one of the better Hilda players at checking Jump from me. Because like there are definitely some cues that I use to like, okay, is it safe to jump here? Is it safe to jump there? And you are very aware of like that win condition. So it makes things a bit more awkward for me trying to get in, because like I love jumping on people. I love jumping on Hilda in particular too.
It's actually funny that you mentioned that, because like one of my favorite things about fighting games is focusing on anti-airing someone that tries to get in, especially as a zoner, where it feels very necessary that you would have to take to the skies every once in a while.
Yep.
So I'm pretty much always checking for it, because Hilda has unusually good anti-airs for no reason.
I mean, she almost has to, right?
Yeah, I think 3C is like 70% of the screen. Like, please give me that.
For real. But now we'll kind of transfer towards the end of our questioning here. We just have a couple more to go. Would you say that you have any rivals? And if so, why do you consider them to be your rivals?
Well, this is a bit of a joke that usually goes by, and I think that it's very true. Like, the rival of Hilda players is literally every Hilda that exists, because you look at them, and you try to keep it nice and civil. Like we all like share what we do, but Hilda players hate on Hilda players more than anything else in the world, and it's literally true for all of us. Like, if you ever listen to a Hilda player watching a Hilda player, it's just malicious. They're like, bro, what's this guy doing? I want to fight him now so I can smoke this man, or etc.
Yeah, I can show them exactly what the holes in their own game plan are. It's kind of funny, because I think the Eltnums have a similar sort of dynamic. Although surprisingly, I think like Seth and Batista players are probably the most like collaborative, and like there doesn't really seem to be like a whole lot of smoke between them. It's not like the thin veneer, like we're all smiling, but like if they do this to me, I'm gonna fuck them up because I know that's not real. It just seems like they're all like, oh, okay, we hit somebody with drill today, we hit somebody with unblockable, let's go, that sort of feeling.
I think it's because it's one of those things where even if it's like fake, in Seth and Batista's case, you're basically like running a gauntlet of like just overload of what can happen. So even though it is fake, you gotta make sure someone knows it's there.
Yeah. I think it might also be because like, Hilda has a little bit of a stigma. I think Hilda is probably one of the more misunderstood characters in the game too.
I blame delay-based netcode.
Yeah, delay-based is going to do it. But even offline, when we are having events, 50-50 and things like that, like we're really definitive topics when speaking about the character. And
so something that I actually think is a big problem with that is I've been experimenting with a lot of ways to like counterplay certain things a character does, because it helps me learn, what I can strengthen better, just knowing my weaknesses. And after like experimenting with the counterplay, I actually the other day was trying the exact same counterplay against another player, and I realized that 3 frames makes it really hard to do consistently, but it was consistent with none. So I think being able to practice with net play is something that we typically do, and if we can't do it there, it feels like it's not something we can do.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge thing that like hits Hilda, because the gaps are something you really have to look for. You have to be really attentive for certain like key poses and just things that she's doing to know what's going up, and then you also have to deal with it in time to not get counter hit by her best starter.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And if you get hit with that, it sucks. Like, it really does. It's really tilting. Yeah. I still feel that today.
Yeah, I can empathize with that too. As much as I've practiced against the character, there are some things where it's just like, okay, I got hit by this. Well, you have to like you have to put it in the back of your head and like just make do with what you can do in various situations. It's hard to do though.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But so we got through the rivals. We'll say that the Hilda player collective are your rivals here.
Actually, so the Hyde players too, because I just happen to play them. That's probably the only reason I'm good in the matchup is because like every Hyde player wants to fight me.
Yeah.
And it's like Hyde Park, man.
Yeah,
Like,
Hyde Park.
This is nothing but Hydes.
Hyde on the Park, yeah. So who are some of the players that you find are on your radar? This could be opponents that you're looking forward to fighting, or players that you think are like on the come up or underrated. What sort of players do you like? What sort of players come to mind when you hear that question?
So a player that's actually been on my mind pretty recently is actually a Hilda player that I've been playing with a little bit by the name of Kite, because I was playing against him and he makes a few questionable neutral decisions, but he actually had some really interesting rooting things that we talked about. He was actually the guy that taught me that you could actually do TK nail torrent and it doesn't ground bounce, and that's like a core part of how I think about a lot of enders now, because I know that if I make a mistake and use too many bounces, I can always hold on to that. So just the fact that he's like holding on to things like that, I actually talk to him pretty often about combo structure, about Hilda, because he's pretty good at it. Yeah. And then, I always gotta throw in your boy Mark for mod, just because he downplays himself and he doesn't realize that he's getting so much better at the game.
Yeah, he's getting crazy strong. Like, if you have a chance, there's a video of me at last year's Climax of Night playing Mark. And Mark, I think, was pretty new at the time. He wasn't particularly bad or anything. But if you can, watch the decisions that he made there versus, like, stuff that you see him doing now. It's a really big difference. But, like, Uni is that sort of game. Like, even if you're getting better, like, you just feel like it's bad because you're chasing, like, the shadows of, like, people who are amazing. Like, right. Even if you're good, even if you're great, like, you look out and you're just like, I got 10-2'd by Foxov or 15-0'd by Redblade or something like that. Like, I'm just trash. Like, I can't do anything. But, like, that's not how it is. That's not how it actually is,
I remember there was this time after like playing the game for a year and a half, I finally beat Spinach in literally one round, and it was like the biggest thing ever for me.
Yeah, it's a really big deal, development in this game, because it's not the easiest thing to do, especially when you kind of hit the mid-level maze. It's just like, there are so many things that you need to work on, but like even if you tunnel on one thing, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to like see results in the forms of wins.
Especially since every answer to something in this game has an answer for that answer.
Yeah. It's hard. But do you have any players that you find inspire your play, or do you have players that you look up to in this game?
Oh yeah, definitely. Usually the people I look up to is the people that I play the most. I obviously look up to you a lot. You definitely are very beneficial in the way that I like think about certain things, because you make it seem like a lot more simpler, and I have a really big problem with overthinking in this game. Like, I get extremely anal when it comes to like certain things, and if it doesn't work, sometimes my stubbornness does get to me, because I'm very quick to like wonder, like, mathematically I shouldn't have gotten hit there, like I'm that guy, right? When I probably just made an input error and did something too late. So I gotta like sit, I gotta hold that L, and I just gotta calm down and get in the next one. Chill out, because you can't play better if you're in that headspace. And you actually helped me get that a lot faster than I normally would.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it may not seem like it, but I definitely play to the numbers myself too. Like, numbers and situational awareness have been like things that I think are my strength to some extent. But like,
I definitely feel it, because if I ever made myself like minus enough, just the 6/6 Cs, I was like,
yeah, it's coming out. It's buffered.
It's pretty much like immediately, like you just know when you can do that. So I was like, okay, this guy knows the frame data pretty well, because every time I am at least -2, my man is yeeting in here.
Yeah, it's like I looked at the frame data. I looked at like, okay, what's the expected sort of return from this? What is Hilda expected to do here? What is she not expected to do? What can I do? Can I start my offense here? Or in the case if you try to do like double double skewer, or not double skewer, excuse me, double lance is just like, okay, you get counter hit and you're in the corner eating like 3300, you know. But at the same time, I also am like, if I need to punt on something, that's fine. Like, okay, I might have seen something and it didn't work the first time, but maybe I could do it the second time. Like, you play that sort of calculus, like you play that sort of math where it's just like, this didn't work this time, but I know it works. Maybe I just have to do it better next time. You know, it lets you put past like mistakes and input errors kind of behind you, I think.
Right.
But there's me, but are there some other people that inspire your play, or players that you look up to?
So another one that I definitely have, Frosty the Snowman, obviously. Yeah. I figured that this probably isn't a surprise because I'm pretty sure he was one of the reasons I pursued playing Enkidu more, even when I started playing Hilda, because I learned a lot of things that I did from him in particular. He's a really cool guy. Yeah. He's fun to play with, and he's pretty informative. Like, even when he like caps, you know, he's still pretty knowledgeable of the game, and it shows very well. Like, he's very like talented when it comes to Under Night and analyzing a bunch of things. He makes you think about a lot of things you normally wouldn't.
Yeah, he's very
extremely
analytical.
Specific with the stuff that he knows. Yeah. Like, he's like, oh, I have a counter for like hide 2-2C if he outspaces it by like 2 pixels, and I'm like, why do you know this? But he's like, I have the materials, I'm gonna learn. Like, and that's a pretty interesting thing from a player, to just be willing to learn literally everything your character has.
Yeah. I think the same way. That's kind of how I think about Akatsuki too. Of course, you know, it's easy to tunnel, especially like if you are really confident in your own decision making, and that's what makes like it interesting playing other people, because you get presented with situations that are just like, oh, well, damn, I wasn't prepared for that. Okay, well, let me think about how I have to do this. You know, and sometimes like those little things that you don't account for can transition into you losing like 5-0. It's like, oh, okay, I didn't know how to do this. Fuck, now I have to go back into the lab and pay attention to this. Like, it's really important.
And sometimes it actually strengthens your character, because learning that a character, like, you know, does X to get out of something, you're like, that could actually happen with my character as well. So maybe in this scenario, I would have to be a little more careful, just to make sure I'm not also getting owned in the exact same fashion.
Exactly. So we've basically lost a year because of COVID-19, but what are some of the things that you've done to maintain your own interest in the game?
At first I thought that I would just keep, you know, occasionally playing it for like X hours at a time, because before COVID I would actually stream this game for like 8 to 10 hours at a time. Like, I played it a lot.
Yeah, I remember.
But as time goes on, the delay hits your mental state, and you're just like, I can't keep up. I'm not strong enough anymore. Yeah. I can't balance it out with locals anymore. So it's a lot more frustrating.
Yeah.
So what I do is I find myself in training mode a lot more, and I actually find myself not actually playing the game, but simply talking about it, just to see what other people are also doing, to make sure that I'm not like slacking. Because even when I like was going through it, I was like, I don't want to play Uni anymore. I was still talking to people. I was still like in their streams, like conversing about certain setups and how you could interact with it. With my character, like a different character. Like, I'm not gonna like leave, but I'll always be around, even if I'm not playing the game.
Yeah, that actually is one of the techniques that I kind of use to keep myself revitalized. I feel like I'm kind of known as the guy that like knows everything. It's like, oh, he knows about this player. Damn, I didn't even know that he was watching this or that. And that is like just kind of how I've been. Like, whether it's in the Uni Discord where I'll like pop into the Bethesda channel to see what new messed up setup that they're doing, or, you know, I'm following Japanese players on Twitter and I don't know, like Kyo Hilda put out a new thing. You know, you've seen it. You've seen me in there. It's like, hey, did you know that this happened? I saw Mararu tweeted this. You know,
it's like, ooh, snatch.
Exactly. You know, that even just kind of seeing what other players are up to has been really important to maintain my interest. And of course, you know, I'm always down to talk about the game. We've talked about it a lot between characters and things like that. But so considering that we know what we've kind of lost and like where we are interest wise with COVID-19, do you have any specific goals that you're working toward, whether it's, you know, toward 2021 where locals might be a thing that starts happening, or, you know, preparation for a new version or anything like that? But do you have any specific goals that you're working toward?
So funny enough, so a goal I have for Uni in particular was actual content creation, because I've been humoring the thought of like making videos regarding like counterplay for X characters for the longest, but the problem comes to when I am, budgeting my time with everything that I'm doing, and just like the stillness of like not having too much to do with the pandemic, it kind of makes you lazier.
Yeah, it definitely does.
It's really been hitting me, so it's been harder to make those videos like time and time again. I've been holding it back for like I think over half a year now, so I need to actually like start doing that soon. So I need to actually start, writing that stuff down, maybe dedicate less time, studying like color theory, every once in a while, just so I can get that video out there. But, maybe just like give myself a bigger time frame, so I'll just be willing to do it. But I definitely need to like let people know what I know, because I don't like it when people know like really good things for the game and don't tell me. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, that is, as you can kind of see since I'm interviewing you now, right? Content creation is something that I've kind of been thinking about. Like I have my blog that I have not updated in a whole year. So that sort of content I wanted to make. I've done a little bit of like playing content, but not really like speaking about it or, putting together other things. I think I did like an Akatsuki block string guide that I kind of want to update because I understand more things about how to structure this character's pressure now. So I'd like to start making videos and things like that. Like I do a lot of combo stuff on Twitter or whatever, but I think I'd like to do a little bit more dynamic content creation myself too.
Yeah, we need the Linkin Park CMV.
I've been thinking about it. I was actually humoring putting together like a very like loosey sort of like Christmas combo video, something like sub 1 minute, just throw something out there with gameplay, because I know I've done a lot of dope shit, so it's just like I've thought about putting some stuff together. But in case, I think we're about here to wrap it up. So finally, it's not so much of a question but more of a request. Please give us some places to see your content or to follow you at.
Oh, for me?
Yeah, for you.
So let me actually remember what my content is. So on Twitter, mine is UntoldMelody, except the zeros or the O's are actually replaced with zeros because there's a dead account that stole my name. I'm very upset about it. It has not done anything. My YouTube is UntoldMelody3. Okay. The O's are actually O's this time, and I actually intend to be making videos there pretty soon. But for the most part, I keep that. I stream on Twitch as well. I stream Uni like primarily, so I'm definitely gonna be playing Devil May Cry today because Virgil's coming out and I'm excited.
Oh hell yeah, let's go!
And on Twitch, it's actually just UntoldMelody. Like it's actually a pain in the butt because all of my names, as you can see, are not the same.
Yeah. But
that's just because UntoldMelody is a pretty like standard Microsoft like Xbox Live name right there. So I'm not surprised that so many people have the original.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to work with it.
Well, I think this is about the end of our interview portion. Thank you for taking the time out and speaking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. I love these things.
Yeah, no problem.